Hello friends! Today we have an incredible story straight from the heart of the Pyrenees. The small resort town of Ransol in Andorra found itself in the epicenter of snow chaos. Imagine, where usually at the end of March, spring streams are already ringing and tourists are enjoying the last slopes, a real blizzard suddenly broke out. The wind roared at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour, snow fell in walls, and visibility dropped to zero, as if nature threw a white blanket over Ransol and said, "Winter is not over yet." Hotels turned into snow fortresses, and tourists, dreaming of sunny slopes, stuck to the windows, filming this snowy extravaganza on video. Locals whispered they had not seen anything like this for years. The climate is playing its mysterious games. Rescue services immediately got to work. Snowplows roared to clear the blocked roads, teams delivered warm blankets and hot tea to those stuck in hotels, and helicopters circled at the ready in case anyone needed an emergency evacuation. City authorities wasted no time. They closed all the roads to prevent anyone from getting trapped in the snow, and even called in help from neighboring regions to deal with this white monster. There are no casualties yet, but the tension in the air is like snowflakes in this blizzard. Will Ransol be able to get out from under the snow? Or is this just the beginning of a winter surprise from nature? Share your thoughts in the comments. We are all interested in what you think about this snow drama. Let's talk about the massive flood that hit the city of Prijedor in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the northwest of Republika Srpska, the Sana River burst its banks due to heavy rains, flooding almost 800 buildings. These are houses, schools, churches. Entire neighborhoods were underwater. 145 people were evacuated, and those who had nowhere to go were placed in the local Prijedor hotel, Republika Srpska. President Milorad Dodik called this flood the worst in the last 100 years. Local authorities declared a state of emergency, and Interior Ministry helicopters are already monitoring the situation from the air. By morning, the water level in the river began to decrease, but rescue operations are ongoing. Residents are advised to boil water before using it to avoid health problems. This natural disaster has become a real test for Prijedor, but the authorities promise to do everything possible to help the victims. The state of Oklahoma in the United States has faced a real natural nightmare. It's Friday evening, people are relaxing after a working week, and then, bam! The sky opened up and hail the size of golf balls rained down. Yes, you heard right, almost 2 inches in diameter. Greer, Wichita, and Beckham counties turned into a war zone as icy projectiles pummeled cars, shattered windows, and dented roofs like a meteor shower. The National Weather Service literally screamed over the air, "Thunderstorms! Winds up to 60 miles per hour! Take cover!" Residents ran inside, hiding from this celestial attack. Some daredevils even filmed videos of hail bouncing off the ground like tennis balls. Imagine the noise, the crackling, the howling wind, a real blood-curdling show of the elements. Luckily, there are no reports of casualties yet, but locals are already calling it Ice Armageddon. You know what's the craziest thing? This storm was just the beginning. By Saturday morning, nature had calmed down a bit, but meteorologists winked and said, "Oklahoma, spring is just warming up! Expect new surprises!" And they are right. This state is famous for its weather antics. Sometimes a tornado will spin, sometimes hail the size of a chicken egg will fly in. You will definitely not get bored here. Do you think you are ready for such whims of nature? Share in the comments! And now a story straight from the jungles of Thailand, where nature decided to put on a real fire show. In the Mae Hong Son region, in the north of the country, a powerful forest fire broke out, and it still keeps everyone on edge. This region is a real green treasure trove. Dense forests, hills, and even the border with Myanmar nearby. But here's the problem. The dry season is in full swing, and one spark is enough for everything to go up in flames. The fire has already engulfed hundreds of hectares, and the smoke, they say, can even be seen from space. Local residents are filming how orange tongues of flame devour trees, and the sky is covered with a gray shroud. The authorities have thrown all their forces into the fight against the fire. Firefighters, volunteers, and even helicopters are dropping water from above. But the heat and wind are on the side of the fire, and it is not thinking of giving up yet. Environmentalists are sounding the alarm. Mae Hong Son is home to rare animals and plants, and this fire could be a disaster for nature. There are also rumors that the fire could have started due to arson. Someone was clearing the fields and did not keep an eye on it. Whether this is true or not is still being investigated, but locals are already calling it Fire March. By the morning of March 31st, the smoke had cleared a little, but extinguishing is still underway. How do you like this story? Imagine, you are in the forest, there is a fire all around, what would you do? Write your ideas in the comments. Maybe you have a plan to stop the elements. And tell us if you have encountered something similar. A powerful flood hit Viotá, a small town in the Cundinamarca department in Colombia. Heavy rains that did not subside for several hours led to a sudden flood of the river and an overflow of the local Quebrada San Juana, a stream that literally burst its banks. 7 residential areas are underwater. Streets have turned into raging rivers, houses are flooded, and residents are panicking and trying to save at least some of their property. According to local sources, rescue teams are already on the scene. Firefighters, police, and volunteers are working tirelessly to help the victims. But the situation remains critical. People are reporting destruction, and the authorities are only just beginning to assess the scale of the disaster. The emergency number 123 and the CETEL hotline are ringing off the hook. Residents are asking for urgent support. These are not just puddles, as some say. This is a real natural disaster that requires immediate attention. Cundinamarca Governor Jorge Emilio Rey is already aware of this, but the people on the ground need real help, and right now. Meteorologists blame La Niña. This climate phenomenon has shown its teeth again. Dozens of families have been evacuated, but the fight continues. Viotá is no stranger to floods, but no one expected this. How can we help these people? Share your ideas in the comments. A small town in El Reno, Oklahoma, USA, found itself in the middle of a nighttime thunderstorm worthy of a Hollywood thriller. Darkness, silence, and suddenly, lightning is tearing the sky apart. Thunder is rumbling so loudly that the windows are shaking. The National Weather Service had warned during the day, a storm is approaching with winds up to 90 kilometers per hour and hail the size of a coin. But what began after sunset exceeded all expectations. Residents say flashes of lightning illuminated everything as if it were daytime, and peals of thunder forced even the bravest to hide. El Reno is a place where nature does not joke. This town already made history in 2013 due to a record-breaking tornado, so the locals know how to keep their ears open. Luckily, this time there were no destructions, but there was no power until almost the morning. The thunderstorm knocked out power lines. Social networks exploded with videos. Lightning strikes right into fields, and the sky is ablaze, like a fireworks show. By the next morning, the storm had died down, leaving behind only puddles and eyewitness accounts. Meteorologists say this is just a warm-up for the spring storm season in Oklahoma, and it is always epic here. How do you like this? Imagine, you are in El Reno. It is night. A thunderstorm covers the city. What do? Film it on your phone or dive under the blanket. Write your stories in the comments. Share whether you have seen such storms. We have a story that will send shivers down your spine. The small town of Santo in Texas, USA was hit by a hailstorm that turned a quiet evening into a real natural drama. On Friday after sunset, the sky over Santo darkened, and then it began. Hail the size of walnuts, up to 2 inches, fell from the sky as if from a giant catapult. The National Weather Service warned of thunderstorms with winds up to 60 miles per hour, but locals did not expect such an icy apocalypse. Cars were covered in dents, windows cracked, and residents filmed how chunks of ice bounced off the ground like popcorn on a frying pan. Santo is in the Texas outback, just an hour from Fort Worth, where such storms are not uncommon in the spring. But this one was special. Social networks were filled with photos of broken roofs and stories of people hiding in basements while the wind howled like in horror movies. Fortunately, there were no serious casualties, but the damage is still being assessed. By morning, the storm had died down, leaving behind wet streets and a bunch of stories for posterity. Meteorologists say this is only the beginning of the storm season in Texas, so Santo can still surprise. The town of Orillia in Ontario, Canada was hit by freezing rain. turning the streets into a skating rink and turning the lives of locals into a real test. It all started on Saturday evening when a powerful storm hit the region. Freezing rain, up to 15 millimeters thick, covered everything around: roads, trees, wires. By Sunday morning, more than 360,000 homes across Ontario were without power, and Orillia was no exception. Power lines were breaking under the weight of ice, trees were falling like dominoes, and cars were sliding like in a Hollywood action movie. Locals say they haven't seen anything like this for a long time. Social networks exploded with videos of people trying to walk along sidewalks, holding onto fences, and cars were skidding at every step. Authorities urged everyone to stay home. Icy roads have made life threatening. Hydro One power engineers are working around the clock, but the storm is not giving up. Wind and ice continue to break everything in their path. Environmentalists are also worried. Fallen branches and trees are a blow to the local environment. Orillia is famous for its forests and lake couching, but now chaos reigns there. By Monday, March 31st, the situation has improved slightly, but thousands of people are still without power, and cleaning up the aftermath will take days, if not weeks. The city of Rafha in Saudi Arabia was covered by a powerful sandstorm, turning an ordinary day into a scene from a disaster movie. Rafha is an oasis in the desert in the north of the country, near the border with Iraq. But on Sunday, there was no trace of calm left. The wind raised clouds of sand, covering the sky and reducing visibility to zero. Social networks were filled with videos, cars stopped, people hiding, and sand gushing out like from a giant hose. Locals say they haven't seen anything like this for a long time. The authorities immediately warned, "Stay home, close the windows, don't take risks." Sandstorms in March are not uncommon for Saudi Arabia, but this one stood out for its fury. The temperature dropped, the wind blew sand at speeds of up to 50 kilometers per hour, and Rafha was literally drowning in a dust curtain. By morning, the storm began to subside, but the streets are still covered in sand, and cleaning it up will take time. Environmentalists remind us, such storms are not only a spectacle, but also a threat. Sand clogs everything from equipment to lungs, and the desert is advancing ever more strongly. In Manikaran, a holy town in the state of Himachal Pradesh in India, a powerful rockfall occurred, turning a quiet Sunday into a real nightmare. Manikaran is a place of pilgrims, hot springs, and mysticism in the Parvati Valley. But yesterday evening, at about 6 o'clock, opposite the Gurudwara Manikaran Sahib, a huge mass of stones fell right on the road. 6 people died, including 3 women, and 3 more were injured. It was a moment of horror. People ran, screamed, and dust and debris filled the air. Rescuers rushed to help, but the slope in the area is steep and unstable, and the narrow valley only complicates the work. Locals say that spring rains may have weakened the rock, although the exact cause is still being investigated. But Manikaran is not just a dot on the map. It is the place where, according to legend, Shiva and Parvati left their mark, and now nature has reminded us of its power. As of this morning, rescue work is still underway, and authorities are urging people to avoid dangerous areas. 3 powerful tornadoes swept across the United States, leaving chaos and destruction in Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Missouri. It was a day when nature showed its fury. Several states were hit on Saturday evening. In Arkansas, a tornado hit homes and roads, killing 3 people and injuring 29. And that's just preliminary data. The Department of Emergency Management is still counting the damage. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders declared a state of emergency, and the National Guard is already on the scene to help. Mississippi was not spared either. 6 people died in Walthall, Covington, and Jefferson Davis counties. The tornado tore off roofs, knocked down trees, and the footage from there is like something out of a disaster movie. Locals say they haven't seen such a nightmare in decades. Tennessee and Missouri were at the epicenter of the storm. Missouri has suffered the worst blow. 12 dead, hundreds of homes destroyed, and in Butler County, they are still looking for survivors. In Tennessee, authorities are sounding the alarm. New tornadoes may strike again, and this is keeping everyone on edge. More than 250,000 homes are left without power. Imagine the scale. Meteorologists say this is not the end. The threat of new tornadoes looms over the Mississippi and Tennessee valleys, and wind and hail only increase panic. President Trump has already called for prayers for the victims. And these are not just words. This is a cry from the heart. The Argentine city of Comodoro Rivadavia in the province of Chubut was underwater. The rain poured down like from a hose, and in one day a month's worth of precipitation fell. Streets turned into rivers. Cars were carried away by streams, and houses are knee-deep in mud. Hundreds of people have been evacuated. Rescuers are scurrying around in boats, but the elements are not retreating. Residents are horrified. They haven't seen anything like this for years. Meteorologists say it's an anomaly, and nature hasn't finished yet. The authorities promise help, but the destruction is colossal. How can we bring life back to the city? Let's support the Argentines in the comments. The Italian Vasto in the province of Chieti has found itself in a water trap. Rain poured from the sky and the streets became seething rivers, carrying away cars and drowning houses. Rescuers are sailing in boats, pulling people out, and the electricity keeps going out. This is the worst flood in a decade, and the locals are shocked. Their picturesque town has turned into Venice, but without the romance. Climatologists blame global warming, and residents blame fate. There are no casualties yet, but the damage is growing. Will Vasto be able to recover, or is this just the beginning? A story recently happened in Chile that will give you goosebumps. A foreign tourist went to the Villarrica volcano, one of the most active in South America. But instead of stunning views, he received a blow of fate. Rocks thrown out of the crater fell right on him. The victim is in the hospital, but alive, although he lived through a real nightmare. The volcano was dormant, but suddenly reminded of itself, scaring all the tourists in the area. The authorities are now scratching their heads. How to make such hikes safer? This is proof that nature is not a toy. Have you been to volcanoes? Tell us about your adventures.